Welcome to Tangle Talks. This is your host Shubham Das, and today we have with us an aspiring astronaut. She's also an aerospace grad from Amity, and currently she's working as a scholar in Blue Marble as well as an astrobiological educator at Space Nova. Hi, Shireen. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Shubham. Thank you for calling me, and it's like one of the most exciting experiences for me. So thank you for having me over.
That's great. So let's get started off. You've had quite a journey in your college life. You have interned at ISRO. You're currently working at two space organizations. So let's start at the beginning. What attracted you towards space, and how did your journey start off?
So it all started back in 2004. So it was like kind of a story that I was one day in the afternoon just sitting with my mom, and the TV was on, and there was news about, probably it was the 1 year death anniversary of Kalpana Chawla. So there was a news on about her on the TV, and I saw her, and I told I asked my mom that who is she, and I was, I think, probably 4 or 5 years old at that time. So my mom
Right.
told that she was an astronaut. She went to space, and then there was an accident, and she didn't come back. And that's when I told my mom that I'll also go, but I will come back. And that
Wow.
is how it all started. And I don't think since then even a one day has passed where I've got diverted to any other field of interest. Since that
That's
day,
an
I've always wanted to be a part of the space industry.
Definitely. That's a really amazing story. Like, two key takeaways for listeners is one, that it's always extremely important to have female role models because they inspire you to, go ahead and change your life. And one thing that I personally take away from your story is that the amount of perseverance and the dedication you've shown towards your goal without getting distracted. That's amazing. So now that we know that why you chose space, so let's talk a bit about the industry. So what has been your exposure towards the space industry, and what attracted you more towards it the more and more you got to know about it?
So, initially, I was only interested in reading about the solar system because of my young age. So, I was only about solar system. But slowly, while growing up, I got to know about different stuff. And black hole is something that caught my attention some years back, and I
Right.
have been crazy about it. I just keep reading about black holes, and I'm particularly interested. Like, space is like a bunch of different fields. I'm particularly interested in astrophysics and cosmology. But then I never really got an opportunity to be a part of it. So I thought that let's just take a different route. So that's why after completion of school, I decided I'll go into aerospace engineering. And that was again quite a big step for me.
That's
So being
amazing.
a girl,
So you
that's,
must have read a lot of Stephen Hawking. You must be a fan of his work.
yeah, like I've read about 3 to 4 books by now. Brief History of Time, I've read about 3 times, I guess. Three or
Wow.
four.
That's amazing. So this is how your industrial exposure has been. This is what you think about the industry at large, and you're extremely passionate about astrophysics and cosmology. You've also, you're also an aerospace grad. So how has that worked out for you? Because during your second year, you interned at ISRO, which is one of the most prestigious space organizations all over the world, known for its economical space ventures. So how was your experience at ISRO? What all did you learn? What all new exposures did you have there?
So ISRO was totally something new for me and very exciting. And like you said, like it's one of the most prestigious organizations around the world. So it was like a huge thing for me.
Right.
So my experience as ISRO was quite different. Like I was expecting to see something else there, but then it's like organization, people really do work there, and every time you can't expect that you'll enter here and see some satellite parts there. But I was lucky enough that I had to deal with satellite data for the project that I was doing there. So that was
Right.
like the best thing. So my project required that I had to analyze the satellite data. So I was given access for the same, and I have to do image processing techniques using the Python language. So I completed
Correct.
my project using that. So I was there for 3 months, and the one thing that I liked the best about that place was that there was no mobile allowed. Initially, I didn't like that thing because I was like, because you can't work 9 to 5 continuously without getting distracted. But I think that was the
Right.
best because 9 to 5, I had nothing to do but to my project, and I learned so much about weather forecast. And that's when I actually realized that I'm actually interested in weather forecast and space weather forecast. So that was
Right.
actually the framing of it.
Did not using mobiles also encourage you to interact with your peers at ISRO as well as make
Yeah,
more meaningful
definitely.
connections with your network?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, definitely. Because only my mentor was there, and there were like around 6 to 7 other interns with me, and they were all seniors to me, and from geoinformatics background. So I had so much to learn from them. and they were working even before me at ISRO. So every day
Right.
I used to just interact with them whole day, and we were just working together on our different projects.
That's amazing. So your space journey doesn't stop there. Like after you got your degree, you are also working for Blue Marble. So could you tell us about how that journey came to be and what's your progress so far?
So Blue Marble was quite a coincidence. So it was like in my third year. So I was looking for internships because engineering are required to do 2 internships. So after third year, I was looking for internships and I was facing rejections. So one thing that helped me was LinkedIn. I was shuffling to LinkedIn and I follow almost I think every space organization and every space company possible there. And one day, Blue Marble Space was also one of those companies that I follow. So one day, I just saw a post that they have opened the application for Young Scientist Program, and I applied, and it was like kind of my last resort. And
Right.
coincidentally, it was my luck that they had 30 projects, and out of 30, only one project was technical project, which I could be a part of. Rest all were biology based. So I applied
Right.
for it and I got into it. So that's how I started with the radiation project and more into the space
Okay.
weather forecast. And since then, like that organization has been my family.
Wow, that's amazing. That's really nice to hear. So let's talk a bit more about the space radiation project that you have done. Uh, what was it about? What were you guys trying to achieve, and what were the results in the end? How was your journey?
So initially we started with like the pure research part. So I was given the work of researching on different kinds of material that we can use to
Right.
counter space radiation. So initially, like the internship part of Blue Marble Space was initially all about reading various research papers on various types of materials and what techniques can be used to use that materials in spacecrafts
Mhm.
or in suits. Then later on, like because I had to do my final year project as well, so I approached my mentor and he said that this is a vast project, you can continue on the same. So then I started
Right.
with the simulation part of it, and I got to work with this software which is developed by CERN. So
Right.
now like it's been like around 8 months that I've been working on this software. So what I do exactly is, in simpler words, that I simulate different kinds of material and I bombard those materials with particles of astrophysical radiation, like some
Right.
1 lakh particles or 10 billion or something like that, and I get the results, and whichever material performs well is my main result.
Wow, that's amazing. So you are being exposed to the latest cutting edge technology. You are contributing to the latest space science. So that must be a really exciting journey because anything new or anything radically improvement that you do, that's going to be actually used for space missions. So you are contributing towards the development of us and space, exploring space, which is really beautiful. So you also spoke about you are working on building in new materials. So could you just like touch up on a few of the things, of the few other contributions, a few of the milestones that you have achieved?
So yeah, so I found out about few materials which have performed really well so far in all my results and all my research. So one of them, like I would like to tell about polyethylene, and that one material is already being used in International Space Station, but there it is only being used in the sleeping modules and some other different modules. So my
Right.
main aim is to either use that material only or maybe combine it with a different material to produce a new type of material that we can use to make the space suits, and particularly our focus is to like Martian habitats. So that's
Wow.
again a research going on.
Wow. That's like, this sounds like a sci-fi movie that we're talking about because everything you're doing is so cutting edge, so futuristic. So that's really beautiful to hear. So let's go back to the basics. So your journey into astro science and astrophysics and cosmology, all of this are such niche fields. How would one of our listeners who wants to explore these fields and check whether they want to take this up as a career, what is the blueprint for them? How would they approach this? Are there any recommended books or any websites or any games or like anything that somebody can get started off with, somebody in school? What would you recommend? How do they start off?
So for someone in school, I would suggest reading a lot of books, and especially I would suggest Stephen Hawking was that's my personal favorite because there's a lot
Right.
of things. I myself started reading that book when I was I think in ninth or 10th standard.
Right.
So that was like a great exposure. There were a lot of things that I learned because of that book. And when you read the book, you kind of know about different things and you search on those books. So I would
Correct.
suggest like reading Stephen Hawking, and then there's Neil Gaiman, and there's this Neil deGrasse Tyson, the one of the
Right.
finest astrophysicists and authors of great science books. So for school students, definitely reading books is something. And also there's one more thing that what you can do is they can search on net for online courses. There are multiple courses on astronomy and astrobiology and different fields of space science, because that's what I
Right.
did. Not in school though, but yes, definitely after entering college, because aerospace engineering had nothing to do with space, unfortunately, in
Right.
India. So I had nothing to do but to research for online courses in space and on online. So I was like going through those courses, and I completed, I think, around 9 or 10 courses throughout those 4 years. So
Wow,
that is
that's
something I
amazing.
would suggest for the school students. And for students who are part of college now,
Right.
LinkedIn is a very important platform. I strongly recommend strongly recommend that particular platform, because LinkedIn has like an approach throughout the world, and I got my like most important internship of Blue Marble through LinkedIn. And
Wow.
every day I get connected with different people from space industry, and even Space Nova is something that I got into because of LinkedIn.
Wow.
So using
That's really
LinkedIn is very
beautiful to hear.
important.
Definitely, that's a great message and a great takeaway for all our listeners. And I think that also brings me back to Tangled. One of the problems with this online education or the online courses that happens in the current world is that there's only a 5 to 15% completion rate. That means almost 85% of students are registering for online courses but not seeing it through. And Tangled is trying to tackle this through gamification. And one of the most important features is also the way that the mentors can connect individually and the peer-to-peer learning that takes place, as well as an interesting feature is that 1/3 of all the classes are taken by the students, which increases the collaboration and the peer learning that happens within the group. And that is how these students, are more engaged, and this kind of course completion rates can be boosted up. I'm extremely curious about one question though. Like, there's this stigma that exists around rocket science and space science that, it's extremely mathematical. It's just for the upper echelons of, the smartest of the smartest and the cream of the society. Because you have to be a math genius, you have to be extremely good with numbers and with predictions and very precise. Is this myth true? Like, is it really for the elitist of the elitist, or space science is for everyone?
Definitely not, because I wasn't a genius. I'm still a part of this industry. I've already completed aerospace and I'm planning for my further education in this field. Yes,
Right.
definitely it involves maths and, yes, to be precise, calculus, which is difficult. Yes, but it's not like that someone can't do. If you're really passionate about it and if you really give your time and hard work to it, you can definitely achieve it. I know many people who weren't good at maths, including me, but they
Mhm.
still got through it.
Wow, that's a really beautiful message. So let's get to the interesting part about what is life in space according to you. Like, what is the future? Like, are we actually going to colonize Mars, or like was it going to be some other planet? What is like? Give us an overview, and we're going to talk about this quite a lot in the rest of the podcast. So, what is life in space according to Shireen?
So life in space, according to me, is first of all rid of gravity. Although I don't have any particular enmity with gravity, but definitely imagining yourself in zero gravity is quite an experience. And that's
Right.
why I also aim to become an astronaut because of that, because zero gravity is something that fascinates me. And like about setting up habitats, then yes, I'm particularly curious about the Martian habitats, because the
Right.
planet is totally different from Earth. The atmosphere, the temperature, the conditions, everything is different. And also
Right.
like because I'm working on this project, so I know quite a lot about the radiation atmosphere of Mars,
Right.
and I'm like that it will be quite a task, but it will be very exciting, because that conditions are totally different. There's like gravity
Definitely.
amount is different, radiation amount is different. You can't go out without wearing a spacesuit if you're on Mars. So that
Makes
will be a
sense.
good experience of it. But yes, it definitely has its disadvantages, but then the
Right.
advantages are there as well. You know, imagine leaving Earth and
Hmm.
going to a different planet.
Right. Before we get more into that, like, you have been talking a lot about radiation. So could you please tell our listeners that what exactly radiation is in space, and what has it got to do with living in space, and what are the detrimental effects of radiation?
Right. So radiation is basically, people know radiation in two forms. Usually people know about radiation from our microwave radiation or our radio wave radiation. But
Right.
when in space, we are talking about high energy particles like protons and neutrons and other highly charged particles.
Right.
And it's difficult because it is not just the humans, but it also affects the other technical stuffs that we are using, the in systems. Even I've read about that radiation at one point affected the planet's habitability. So maybe because Mars is like that today because of radiation.
Right.
Radiation affects humans because there's like a very small amount of radiation that a human can take. Like, to be precise, there's this unit called sieverts in which we measure radiation, and
Correct.
only 8 sieverts is the amount that a human can take. Beyond that, we can die. It's fatal to us, and
Right.
also it can lead to cancer and other
Right.
issues in your tissues, in your organs, in your cells. So it's like a
Right.
very dangerous issue. And like even in our international space station, there's a high amount of radiation, and sometimes it does
Right.
happen that when there's a solar particle event, because there's more number of particles then, and the whole magnetic field changes, so the radiation amount also increases. And at that time, our astronauts in the ISS are advised to go to a different module so that they can
Right.
protect themselves. So like it's a real cause there and real issue there. So it's like very important to counter
You
that
know,
challenge.
definitely. Another fun fact for our listeners. So it's not that radiation just exists in space. Radiation exists actually all around us. And I was watching this beautiful video by Versatium where he says that radiation also exists in bananas. And if you actually can put together some 22,000 or 25,000 bananas together, that would be as equivalent an amount of radiation as Chernobyl. So it's really fascinating how radiation is all around us, but as you said, there is a minimum threshold after which humans actually start getting negatively affected. So that was just a fun fact for our readers, that radiation is not harmful. It's completely all around us. There are a lot of, I think even humans radiate to a certain extent, but this long-term exposure to these kind of high radiations is an extreme risk in space, which people like you are trying to combat and trying to find a way around scientifically. So that's beautiful. Um, I really have to ask this. When are we actually going to colonize space, according to you? Like, do you think it's going to happen in the next 20 years, next 50 years, probably next 100 years? What does a realistic timeline look like, according to you? And why do you think so?
I think it is going to take at least 10 years more,
Okay.
because like a decade, to be honest. Like it's 21 right now, so I think by 2031 maybe, I think that time will be sufficient enough, because we have like really good technologies now. More
Right.
technologies are developing, and there's so much research going on to counter the radiation and other challenges in space. So I think in 10 years we'll be able to at least go to Mars.
Right.
Although I'm very confident about the setting up habitat on Mars, but I'm not confident about the journey to Mars somehow, because
Right.
we explore the planet. We have sent landers and rovers to the planet, but there's nothing in the space between Earth and
Correct.
Mars. We just have the satellites around Earth and some satellites around Mars, but there's nothing
Right.
in between. So that is something that I'm curious about, that how we are going to counter the challenge that we face there, because the radiation amount is going to be increased. We'll have microparticles, maybe debris particles that are going to
Definitely.
hit the space shuttle. So that journey is I'm quite curious about. But reaching
Right.
Mars, I'm confident that within 10 years we'll reach Mars. With Elon Musk by our side, definitely.
Wow. That's a beautiful message to hear. So, coming back to your story, you have spoken about how you got into space and what are your journey been like. So let's talk about the future. How can somebody get into research, and what are the realities and the truths and the myths of this field?
So getting into research is something like the first step. I would say that finding out about the great mentors, like the people who are actually working in this field, because that's how I approached. Like I have approached various professors in India, outside India. So approaching the professors is very important. One thing that I've noticed is that people are very restricted and kind of reserved. Like I know certain friends of mine who want to do research, but they're kind of reserved. They're like, we don't know the person, how we can approach them for a project to do. But I think that's something you should just overcome, because you need to approach. Like no one is going to come to you. You need to approach the different professors in your field, whatever you're interested in space. I would say
Right.
like approaching different professors, writing them mails, proper mails about how you interested in their research and how you will want to contribute and increase your knowledge in that. And about the problems in research, I would say that never expect that your result is correct in first time. Like it happened with me just in my final year project, that I had around 1,000 results, and I think around 15 days before my
Right.
final presentation, I realized that all of them were wrong, and I was really scared. I approached my mentor. He's like, "It's very common in research. You can't expect 99% of the time. This is what happens. Only 1% success rate is there in your research." So that
Right.
is something I want to tell the researchers, that results in the first go. You need to work really hard and for a long time to get the right results.
So I think that's a beautiful message that we take from your story, that it's not about whether you get the correct result or not. It matters that you took the initiative. It also matters that you see it through to the end and you persevere and you keep working hard. And that's what the actual success of research journey is. And on that note, I'd like to end this podcast. It was really, really great talking to you, Shireen. I hope you had a fun time too.
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Shireen.